Hello everyone, and welcome to another exciting adventure at the Hub World. Today's quest will have us covering the topic of the recently announced Kingdom Hearts 4. My name is Jules, and today our party members are...
Matteo, and I am the only party member today.
Yes, it's a two-person podcast today. We don't have these often. I don't think we've ever had one between myself and Matteo.
No, I've done two solos with Gino, the Justice League, or Zack Snyder's Justice League review, and the Halo Infinite podcast. So
Yes, but this is our first one together.
Yes.
Which is interesting. Considering the topic, it's very interesting. But we'll get to that in a sec. Whether you're joining us from YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, be sure to give us a like or a follow. And we're going to get this adventure rolling right away, actually. We're going to skip Icebreaker. We're going to skip housekeeping. This is going to be a little bit of a mini episode as we put together one of our showdowns that's coming up. It'll take us a little bit longer to get ready. So you'll get this kind of like a little mini episode. But I am a massive Kingdom Hearts fan. As you probably know, actually, if you check back at our Sora and Smash reactions. But when this was announced, I basically said, like, we have to do something. And this is what that something will be. It will be me and Matteo talking about it. Gino is actually the one who's played all the Kingdom Hearts games, not Matteo. But Matteo, you've watched him play, right?
I watched him play a fair amount of them. Like, I fell asleep during a lot of it, but I was awake for most of Kingdom Hearts 3. And I'm a huge Disney fan, like classic Disney animation and stuff like that. So, like, I'm interested in Kingdom Hearts, but I'm not at the same time. So,
yeah.
But
so
I'll try to keep up.
That's okay. So I think this podcast is going to be structured a little differently. So it's going to be a lot of me talking at Matteo and telling him some stuff, probably catching him up with some things, and also informing some of you who are listening about some things that you might not know, as I am very up to date with Kingdom Hearts stuff. And then it's going to end with a little bit of speculation. But just to start, like, let's just like overview what happened. Like, why was Kingdom Hearts 4 announced yesterday? Like, what is the context of this? What did we see? Like, what do we know? So, for about a year now, Tetsuya Nomura, who's the director of Kingdom Hearts, the creator of Kingdom Hearts, has been teasing that there was going to be a big announcement this year for the Kingdom Hearts 20th anniversary. He essentially said last year, while we will not have a game ready for you during the anniversary year, we will at least be announcing a game. And so there was a lot of buzz around the next major title was going to be announced this year. We did know there was an event happening yesterday, so I was anticipating it. Like, I was not surprised. I actually, like, we had an Avatar tabletop session Saturday night that went till like 1 in the morning, and that's when the event in Japan was being held. So I actually was checking to see if it had been announced then, but it had started then, so it wasn't going to be for a few more hours. So I went to bed fully knowing that I was waking up to Kingdom Hearts news, and I woke up to like all these chats, like literally like a text from my cousin, like being tagged in group chats, like message from some friends, like, oh my god, look what was announced, and like none of it phased me because I was just like, yeah, I was expecting this. So, and then I watched the video. Like, it didn't phase me because it wasn't like everybody else was like, oh my god, can you believe this? I'm like, yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
I've been following the news, so
I surprised Gino with like, I woke him up and played the trailer, and he was very happy. Like, I skipped all like the mobile game stuff. He's not interested in that. But then, yeah, seeing the trailer was really exciting.
I will say, like, I won't get to it in a little bit why, but I will say I'm a little bit surprised that it's Kingdom Hearts 4 that was announced, but I'm also not surprised. But let's just talk about, okay, where we're at. So in 2019, Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, long-awaited conclusion to the Kingdom Hearts story that had begun since the beginning, the end of the what they call the Dark Seeker saga, which was everything, the comings and goings of Xehanort, and that was the end of that. But they've been building since even before that game what the next arc is going to be. And they had told us that there were going to be seeds planted in Kingdom Hearts 3. And then after Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, they've really been building that this next story was coming with the Remind DLC that came to Kingdom Hearts 3, which had a lot of hints at where we're going. Melody of Memory, the rhythm game that came out later, also had hints, and then there's also been hints within Union Kai, which concluded a little while ago, and then also Dark Road, which was the successor to Union. There's been a lot of buzz about like where the story's going, and like that was pretty much confirmed in the trailer, that we are in the Lost Master arc, which is going to deal with the foretellers, which are characters that were introduced in the mobile game, but have started to pop up in the main series game. Now, what all started is like what was announced. So, what was announced the other day was there's a big trailer, and it opened with a trailer for Kingdom Hearts Dark Road, which is the Xehanort focused mobile game. Basically, what that game was is that was announced a little bit after Kingdom Hearts 3 and was going to explore Xehanort. And they tacked it on to Kingdom Hearts Union. They released a bit of story, and then they were like, oh, the conclusion's coming. And then COVID hit, and they're like, okay, the conclusion's been delayed. They didn't tell us when it was coming. And then they shut down the app. Like, they just straight up shut down the app, and nobody got the conclusion. And what they announced at that time was, okay, well, the reason we shut down the app is because we're actually shutting down the online servers of the game, but we will be releasing a new app at some point in the future that will be an offline version of Dark Road where you can just complete the story, as well as it will have a cinema where you can view all of the cutscenes from Kingdom Hearts Union. So essentially, what they're doing is they're giving us an app that allows you to experience that story. That might be maybe not necessary to the next arc, but it will definitely be insightful. There's a lot of good things in there, a lot of tidbits. The second thing they announced was Kingdom Hearts Missing Link, which looks to be a successor to the story of Union Kai. It's going to continue to follow like what happens after the events of that, and like explore the new world that was introduced in Kingdom Hearts 3, Skada ad Kylum, which is where Master Xehanort and Master Ericus were trained, and it's going to explore a little bit of the history there. And then, of course, Kingdom Hearts 4 was announced. Now, in this trailer, it opens with some very hyper-realistic graphics. We get a glimpse of Sora, who doesn't even look like Sora. He's like, his hair isn't spiky anymore. He looks very realistic. And he's greeted by this woman, and a massive Heartless, like Kaiju Heartless, appears in what looks to be a like Tokyo-inspired city, like real world city, and like starts wreaking havoc. And he goes and he battles it, and that's the end. It's a Kingdom Hearts 4.
Now, I was actually awake for this part when Gino was playing Kingdom Hearts 3, but Sora got like sucked into the world of that video game, right? At the end, like Verum Rex or whatever it was called.
Yes.
So that is what we're led to believe is the world that Sora's in right now, right?
So
nothing has happened since Kingdom Hearts 3, like in another game or whatever that dealt with that storyline.
No. So yes and no. So in Kingdom Hearts 3, you're spot on. Like Verum Rex is a in the Toy Story world, it was like a fictional video game that had characters that almost looked like inspired by Final Fantasy 15 characters. And Sora was pulled in at one point in the Toy Story world. He did some stuff and he was pulled out. But now what they've established in Remind and in Melody of Memory is that in the realm of light and in the realm of darkness, these worlds exist in reality. But beyond, like in the afterlife, there are worlds that exist beyond reality or are like sub-reality. And this one world, Quadratum, which is the area that Verum Rex supposedly takes place in, is what is essentially the afterlife, or where Sora has found himself after dying, because Kingdom Hearts 3, spoilers, does end with Sora dying. Like that's the end of Kingdom Hearts 3, is he abuses the power of waking to rescue everybody and eventually save Kyrie, and he was warned by Xehanort that if you use it too much, there will be consequences, and the consequences is he dies. He disappears from the world, and this is where he ends up. Something that is the afterlife. Now, this is also stressed by the fact that the girl that appears in the trailer is actually, to most people, a new character, but to anybody who played the mobile game, she's not. She is an established character. Her name is Strelitzia, and in Kingdom Hearts Union, it's the story of the foretellers, right? the five kind of masters that were there at the Keyblade War. And at the end of the Keyblade War, one of the masters created like this safe haven that was like a copy of the known world, and she transported all the hearts of people in there to like save them from the Keyblade War so that the world didn't end. And she chose 5 people to succeed her. It was written in the Book of Prophecies that 5 people would succeed the 5 Lost Masters, and she gave each of them a book. And Strelitzia was one of these characters. She was given a book, but at the end of what was the original Kingdom Hearts Union, Strelitzia is killed by an unknown character, and that character takes her book and becomes the 5th one. And so, like, the big mystery of the second arc of Union is these new foretellers. They're called the Dandelions. One of them is not supposed to be there. Like, one of them is killed her. And so she is a character that was murdered. Like, she's like canonically dead, and now she's here.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting about her character is that her character is actually, she's the sister of Marluxia, because Marluxia was one of the Dandelions. He was one of the ones chosen to succeed the foretellers, and so was his sister. And part of his story is that he was looking for her and he was trying to figure out who killed her. And so having that connection is also very interesting because he's, the main villain of Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. He made an appearance in Kingdom Hearts 3 again. So it looks like he's going to have a prominent role moving forward, which is very interesting. The other fact is that at the conclusion of Kingdom Hearts Union Kai, you actually find out that the person who killed her and took her book was Ventus, because Ventus comes from the past. Like, all those characters come from the past, and at the very end of Union, they're like projected into different parts of the future, and that's where they all come from. But they all lost their memories. So there's a lot that's going on with this story that's has a lot of connections to like the very deep path, the very deep lore, and that's all going to play out. But what we do know is that Sora is essentially in what is an afterlife, and at the end of Melody of Memory, Riku finds a way to go there to try and rescue him. So there's going to be, and it looks like by the end of the trailer too, Donald and Goofy are like walking around and they're looking for somebody, and they tease that person is Hades, which makes sense because if they're trying to get to the afterlife, who better to go to? But
yeah.
Now, what's interesting to me is this idea that this afterlife or this other world, this other plane of existence exists in what is like unreality. It's almost like fiction. So, what is fiction in their known world? So, for example, in the Toy Story world, which we could say is reality, there's a fictional game that takes place in Quadratum, and therefore Quadratum is unreality. It's a world that exists in unreality. So when we're looking at Kingdom Hearts 4 and we're thinking about what worlds can pop up, one of the things that's popped up in my head is, well, what could be fictional within the world of Kingdom Hearts? And how will that play out in what might pop up? So I feel like this is a good segue. Like, I feel like I've confused our listeners enough with Kingdom Hearts lore.
I mean, it's Kingdom Hearts, like.
So I feel like I've confused them enough.
It's inherently confusing and convoluted. There's literally nothing you could say that would make things make more sense. I would just like to say one thing, though, just about the trailer. Like, I hope the game doesn't completely take place in Quadratum or, like, similar places. Like, don't want to see realistic Sora for more than this world. Like, there's a little bit of immersion breaking with Sora's feet. Like, Sora wears big shoes, and now he's got, like, human-looking feet. Like,
Yeah. I definitely agree with you there, and that's actually one of my biggest fears about this game, is that it might only take place in Quadratum, which has only been heightened by the fact that in an interview post the announcement, Nomura says that originally they were going to call this game Verum Rex, but they were worried that people would be concerned about whether Sora would be in the game or not, so they just changed it to Kingdom Hearts 4. But I hope that they respect the title of Kingdom Hearts 4 enough to recognize that people will expect it to have Disney worlds and therefore not set it completely in Quadratum. And I really hope that even though they're moving to Unreal Engine 5, even though they can do a lot with the visuals, I do really, really hope that the style that Sora and Strelitzia appear in is because they're in Quadratum, which is a realistic world, and we know Kingdom Hearts plays with styles when they go into different worlds, but I really hope that that does not exist across, because that would be jarring.
And I just had a thought, like maybe Sora's stuck here for the entirety of the game, but there's a B plot that covers Donald, Goofy, and someone else, and they're the ones traveling through the Disney worlds. So
Could be.
honestly, it would feel kind of cheap if Donald and Goofy find him at the beginning of the game and then they go through the events of the game. Like, there has to have stakes. Sora probably has to stay here for the duration
Yeah.
of the game.
And that could potentially happen. There's also the other character, Yozora, who is like the main character of Verum Rex, who is supposedly going to be playing a major role in this game. So, like, maybe it is a role reversal, right? Like, maybe you play part of the game as Yozora as he travels with Donald and Goofy, and maybe Sora is going to have some new pals to travel around with. Like, who knows? In any case, when we're talking about worlds, it's interesting because when I finished Melody of Memory, and they were talking about this idea of like unreality or like worlds of fiction. Like there exists the worlds of light and darkness, which are worlds that exist in reality, and then there's worlds of fiction, ones that exist, but they're actually like fictional within the worlds of reality. Verum Rex or Quadratum being one. I started to think like, okay, well, which kinds of Disney worlds would work as being canonically fictional to the worlds? And one of the first ones that popped up in my head was the Jungle Book, because I'm like, it can
Yes.
literally be a book, like
Mm-hmm.
it can be a work of fiction, right? And therefore not exist on the same plane. And like they could even retcon like the Winnie the Pooh world and be like, actually, this was a world of fiction because it existed within a book. So that's one. But then the other big ones, and I do want to talk about these ones more. I'm just kind of giving just like the overview. But the other big ones are, I feel like this is a great way to segue Marvel and the world of comic books in there,
Mm-hmm.
and also Star Wars. And speaking of Star Wars, people are pretty sure that the opening of the trailer was Endor. And there is one clip where if you pause it, it looks like almost like an AT-AT leg.
Star Wars is on something. Honestly, I think that could fit really well. I think Star Wars would work perfectly. Like imagine like having a Keyblade lightsaber. That'd be so cool.
I've
And then
wanted the Keyblade lightsaber since Disney bought Star Wars.
and then like they could do the Force could be like a type of magic spell or something you learn. Like that would be really really cool. But like if it's not Sora though, that is in the world of Star Wars, and it's another character, it would kind of lessen the
Yeah,
significance of that moment, I think. But
yeah.
still, regardless though, like Gummy Ship as an X-wing, that would be
If there's a gummy ship, like who knows? They might do
yeah,
something
well,
different.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. Like I think Star Wars would work so well, and doing it in Episode 6 is like the perfect place. For Sora to finally have the interaction with the Emperor, which will be so funny. Star Wars and Kingdom Hearts are like literally a match made in heaven because they're so campy and so silly, but they would meld well, and I think it would work. And like Square, I think, has a Star Wars game somewhere in development. And speaking of Square and what they have, like they've also been working on Marvel games. One of them has been great, one of them not so great, but maybe that also opens up the door for Square to be working on Marvel within Kingdom Hearts, right? Like, who knows what will pop up? It's really like this is the next generation of Kingdom Hearts. They're moving to Unreal Engine 5, so they really could have those hyper realistic graphics. So it could work. Like, it would be really cool. Where they would set it in the MCU, I have no idea.
New York City.
New York City. Yeah, like, but who knows? Like, it could be really cool. But yeah, like, other than that, like, I think like those are the three that pop on my head for the like world of fiction theme. But we don't need to think about just that. Like in general, where do we like? What are some you want to see, Mateo, or like what are some you think could show up?
I feel like even with Kingdom Hearts 3 when we were talking of like before the podcast existed and all that, the worlds we wanted to see the most are the ones you just said. Jungle Book, Star Wars, etc. But as a fan of the Disney animated films, a lot of the main ones have been covered. Like we have Olympus Coliseum, you have Hundred Acre Wood, you have classic ones like Snow White and Pinocchio and Alice in Wonderland, etc. A lot of the heavy hitters have been adapted into Kingdom Hearts, but like I really want a world for my favorite Disney movie. I would want Robin Hood.
to be brought into Kingdom Hearts. Have the protagonist with Donald and Goofy traveling to the world of Robin Hood and help him rob from the rich to feed the poor. Like that movie, I think is one of the most underrated Disney movies, and it's one of the last really good ones before the Dark Age. And like there is a decent amount of representation recently for like people that care about Disney parks. Like they kind of show stuff for Robin Hood, and I think they're actually going to bring Robin Hood back somehow. I don't know if it's going to be a Disney Plus movie or an actual theatrical movie, but like Robin Hood would be really cool, and it kind of just fits the the vibe of Kingdom Hearts, like another like animal sort of character that they can travel with, and like it's not mainstream, but it has that broad appeal potential. So I would want Nottingham. It'd be Nottingham because duh, but Robin Hood would be my number one, aside from Star Wars and Jungle Book.
I think Robin Hood would be really cool.
Like I have a couple other ones, but like let's just like
Yeah. Swap
bounce
off.
back and forth. Yeah.
Well, I have like two in the same. Like these ones are like I want to mention together. And these are just kind of going again with a theme and less of what I want. If they do go with this theme of like afterlife, I feel like Coco or Soul could really fit well with that theme because both really explore this idea of like what happens when you die. So Kingdom Hearts 3 was very themed. Like it followed movies that all kind of had similar themes to its main plot. So if Kingdom Hearts 4's main plot does focus on this idea of the afterlife and like how do you get back and like what does that look like, Coco and Soul both have like very firm like connections to this idea of like what comes after you die. And I think they're both great movies. I would want Coco more than I would want Soul personally. I think there's more potential there.
Yeah, but like the thing is with those movies is that a lot of them take place in like what's supposedly the real world, right?
Yeah.
So like they would probably be in the afterlife part of those movies. Like the game
Yeah.
would be set in those locations.
Yeah, most likely.
Another one that I would really like is just like another fun world that I think would translate really well to a video game because it's based on video games is Wreck-It Ralph. I think it would be hilarious to have basically the characters in a video game travel to a world about video games. I know Wreck-It Ralph was in Kingdom Hearts 3 as like he was a summon, right?
Yes, he was.
You yourself as the characters travel to the world of Wreck-It Ralph, but then from that world you could probably go to other worlds, and like each world you travel to, like you go to one thing could be Fix-It Felix, another world you can go to is Sugar Rush, etc. You probably won't have like the crazy cameos from Sonic or Bowser or Street Fighter or whatever, but maybe characters from Square-Enix properties could also appear there. Kingdom Hearts is such a fantastic crossover as itself, but the idea of the crossover could be expanded even more because you can have even more Square Enix properties that are not Final Fantasy or The World Ends With You. You could have like Lara Croft, you could have Space Invaders, you could have Chrono. The wealth of IP that Square Enix has is actually quite impressive, and just to have all of them there with Wreck-It Ralph and all his characters, and you could even pull in like other Disney characters. I think just the appeal of that world could just be like a mini game world, and I would be really excited to see that.
That would be really cool. I like that idea. There's not like a ton of other worlds I really want to see, to be honest. I do want to see more modern. I think the modern and Pixar. I think those really worked well in the last one. I think that the Princess and the Frog and Moana are not a matter of if and more of a matter of when. Like if they're not in this game, I think they're coming.
Like Frozen, right? When we saw when Kingdom Hearts 3 was announced, we're like, there's no way there isn't going to be a Frozen world in this game.
Yeah, and I think those two will just work. So I think those are coming. Encanto, I don't know if Encanto will make this game, although when this game does come out, like, it is possible. So, Encanto could...
That might be like a mandate from Disney.
Yeah, you got to put Encanto in. It's very possible. But I'd also just like to see, like, The Incredibles... I think that would be really fun. And, I would want them to take the same approach that they took with Monsters, Inc. and Toy Story, where it's not following the story of the games, but maybe like a story that's like right after, like an original story, kind of like what they did with those ones. So I'd love to see that. I'd love to see Incredibles show up.
Yeah, and I think the last like really big one that I can think of right now that I would want, and I also think it's a when, not an if, is Zootopia.
Oh my god, I want Zootopia so bad.
Everything about Zootopia is fantastic. The world that the animals have created, and like it'd be funny to have like Donald and Goofy just be Donald and Goofy, and then whoever the protagonist is actually turns into the animal because they're the only ones that aren't an animal. I don't know if that's something that's happened in Kingdom Hearts worlds before, but I really love the vibe of Zootopia. Like, if they could incorporate the music in there, that'd be really cool. And just Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde would be really fun companions. And just the actual plot of Zootopia, where like the animals, their instincts are taking over, I think that would actually work well with Kingdom Hearts. I think that would be really funny because they could just tie that into Heart BS, as we call it.
Yeah, like losing your heart. Like, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think Zootopia is like a big one.
Those are the main ones that like I really want to like. That's probably all I have. Like, but like in terms of worlds I would want to see come back, like I would want them to do like it's more of a I want them to take these classic worlds that were in the early games, but then see what they would look like on like today's hardware. Like I would want to see Agrabah.
I am terrified to see what Aladdin will look like in those graphics.
Well, hopefully they're not in the world that Sora's in, but and then like the biggest one though, I think, and I know it's a rights issue, but I would love to see the Deep Jungle, I think is what it was called, where the one with Tarzan. That is a whole separate issue. And like we know we're gonna get original worlds. We know we're gonna get Olympus Coliseum back probably, and 100 Acre Wood probably is coming back too, but I just think like classic worlds from some of the best Disney movies and like that were in all these older games should come back. That to me is the most exciting thing, I think. I could live without another Pirates World. I don't want another Pirates World.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting a Pirates World. I would love to see more classic Disney, and like for sure like 100 Acre Woods and Olympus Coliseum are like staples at this point, but the thing is, this is the first game of a new arc, so really anything could happen. Like they might shift up the formula altogether. Like part of me is almost like feeling like, what if they take this opportunity of being in like the unreality to do like Disney worlds that aren't Disney? So like things Disney owns that aren't really Disney. Like what if the worlds we get are like Star Wars, Marvel, I don't want to say it, but like what if we get Avatar Blue People?
Alien.
Yeah, like what if we get like The Simpsons and like
That'd be weird.
It would be weird for sure. But can you like imagine if like that's the route they go, is like this is the game where you go to all the Disney worlds that aren't really Disney and then they just never do it again. Indiana Jones.
That would
Like
be pretty original, right? Like,
yeah.
but
Indiana Jones would be cool actually. Now I kinda want Indiana Jones. I think that one could work really well. I would love if they did Star Wars and Indiana Jones and had Sora interact with Harrison Ford in both universes.
hey, didn't I see you before?
It'd be so funny.
Heart BS could be used to explain that somehow. Han Solo is Indiana Jones nobody.
Yeah. But there's so much to work with, and that's the thing, is Disney has expanded so much since Kingdom Hearts 3. Like when Kingdom Hearts 3 started development, I think they had just bought Star Wars, or like 2013. When would that, maybe they had already.
Disney bought Marvel, I think, like just before Avengers came out. And that was in 2012, I think.
And then Star Wars, I think, was a bit after. So I think like when Kingdom Hearts 3 was being conceived and like started early development, a lot of those things were happening, but they were fresh and they were new. Whereas like now, like this game is being developed after Star Wars and Marvel have been like in Disney's possession for like a long time. They're very successful, and like I feel like they're at the point too where like they're far along enough in their owning of them that they would be okay with them using it. So, like, I do really think that they're big possibilities. The Fox stuff, less so, but, like, you never know. You really never know with Kingdom Hearts. Either way, I'm excited to see what happens. I'm sure we are not going to get our next round of news for at least a year and a half.
I think we should guess the year in which Kingdom Hearts 4 is coming out.
Okay.
I think this game is going to be probably tail end of this console generation. So I'm going to go and say 2027.
2027. I don't want to think that it's going to be that far. So,
Like, look how long it took Kingdom Hearts 3 to come out, right? And they
Sure,
don't have
but
a great track record like Final Fantasy 7 Remake and
so this is what I'll say about Kingdom Hearts, okay? So Kingdom Hearts 3, I believe, was announced in 2013. I believe. Don't quote me on this one. Which means that when they would have shown off the quote-unquote gameplay, not actual gameplay, it was really just what they showed here, which is like emulated gameplay, was in 2014, and then the game came out 5 years later.
yeah.
I'm. This is the thing, is because I genuinely believe next year is Final Fantasy 16. The year after is Final Fantasy 7 Remake Part 2.
You're thinking 2025.
No, I'm gonna say 2026. As the thing is, you said 2027. I'm like, no, that's so far. But then when I think about like 2025 or 2026, I'm like, no, that's too soon.
Like, my gut reaction was 2026, but I added a year for good measure.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 2026, just because I don't want to think it's 2028.
I think 2028 is too far.
2026. That's what I'm going with. 2026. It'll be here. Know what though? 2027. They could be here for the 25th anniversary.
That's what the other thing I was thinking is, 25 is a bigger deal than 20. So
maybe, but I'm gonna say 2026 just for good measure, because I want to believe.
you got to believe with your heart.
Even though they're moving to Unreal Engine 5, like ultimately I do believe they're going to base a lot of the engine and like the gameplay system off of Kingdom Hearts 3, because from what I understand, Unreal Engine 5 is like you can import Unreal Engine 4 into it. So I'd like to believe that they at least have that going for them, whereas Kingdom Hearts 3 they literally needed to build from scratch. They're not building from scratch here. And I'd like to think maybe it's sooner than what Kingdom Hearts 3's wait was. Either way, hearing that they're moving to Unreal Engine 5 makes me feel like Final Fantasy 7 Remake 2 is also very far off, because they're probably doing that same thing.
Well, it depends on how long it's been in development for. If they had a solid foundation already on their previous engine.
That's true. 2 might not use it, but the third one will.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's kind of like exhausted our Kingdom Hearts talk. So either way, we're excited for Kingdom Hearts 4. I hope that in this next 4, 5, 6 years before it comes out, my one wish is that they go back on their decision to change up the font in the logo. But if they don't, that's all right.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, they changed the font. I'm not a fan. I'm sure we'll have many a mobile game to play until Kingdom Hearts 4 comes out. Well, that brings us to the end of today's quest. If you liked what you heard today, hit that like, subscribe, or follow button. If you want to contribute to the conversation, let us know any ideas for upcoming quests, or just share your thoughts. Leave us a comment. We'll see you next time at the Hub. And Matteo, do you have a message for us?
Actually, I have 2. The first one, because it's Kingdom Hearts podcast, will be Disney allow Nintendo to make a Sora amiibo. And the second one is Microsoft make a new Banjo game. See you, everybody.
See you, everyone.